man, he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. 'Cause he loves in London and Paris and Tokyo. America's
Hello everyone and welcome to another exciting and brand new edition of the Royal Ramble. Now you were unfortunately without the sound of my sexy voice last week due to the holiday, but I'm back at it again. And with that, I hope all the dads out there had a wonderful Father's Day as we now look to the future. It seems that every wrestling company is also looking to the future, but before doing that, we have to reflect on the past, as I do have a quick review of WWE Clash at the Castle last weekend. That will be later in the show, but let's start with your weekly news brief. Former WWE, New Japan, and Ring of Honor announcer Kevin Kelly is reportedly suing AEW over the details of his departure last year. Kelly was told he would be the voice of the new show Collision last summer, but an altercation with fellow commentator Ian Riccaboni effectively changed those plans, and Kelly had publicly expressed frustration over how the situation was handled by the company's HR department. Following success of the collaboration of the Young Bucks sneaker deal, AEW is once again working with Reebok on a new design in tribute to the late Brody Lee. The WWE is embroiled in its own legal battle, this time with MLW after their attempt to trademark the term Heart Foundation. Honestly, I can't see this ending well for MLW. AEW will have its own streaming library of classic pay-per-views available on Triller TV, which I must say is long overdue. AEW star Kota Ibushi has had a string of bad luck regarding his health lately. He is recovering from a shoulder injury suffered 2 years ago, and then injured both of his ankles this past January in a match with Naomichi Marufuji at a Pro Wrestling Noah event, which would require surgery that should have put him out of action for up to a year, but he says he hopes to be back sooner rather than later. AEW Dynamite and Collision are expected to make their UK debuts this summer, as the pre-All-In episodes will be taped in Cardiff, Wales. Rumors are circulating that Shane McMahon has reportedly reached out to All Elite Wrestling about potentially appearing in the promotion. That should make our own Matthew Smith happy, and honestly, if it happens, would be a huge deal. Longtime WWE backstage interviewer Kayla Braxton has officially announced that she is parting ways with the company. I thought Braxton was one of their best in years and especially loved the on-screen chemistry she had with Paul Heyman, but I'm sure wherever she ends up, whether still in the business or not, she will be a great fit. And that is your news of the week. But many of the week's shows were also very newsworthy. Last weekend's Against All Odds event, ran by TNA, featured NXT talent Tatum Paxley accepting the open challenge of TNA Knockouts champion Jordynne Grace. I know that Grace and Paxley had a brief altercation at the last NXT PLE, so there is history there, but I would have probably gone with a bigger star, as nothing against Paxley, but she's not a very recognizable talent to the majority of wrestling fans, as she hasn't been featured enough on WWE programming, and I don't think is someone who really stands out at the moment. I'd have probably had one of the lower tier main roster talents that occasionally also appears in NXT accept the challenge, such as Shayna Baszler or Natalya. But it is what it is, and if nothing else, the anticipation and curiosity alone would have increased TNA Plus subscription, so that's something. And speaking of something, there was also the return to the promotion for one Jeff Hardy, who reunited with his brother Matt in the post-main event angle. So a lot of big things happening in TNA. Some of their stars also crossed over to the WWE and made appearances in the #1 Contenders Battle Royal on Tuesday's NXT this week. The most notable was probably Joe Hendry, who seemed to receive tremendous support from wrestling fans on social media. He didn't last very long in the Battle Royal, but was one of the 2 guys who got a full entrance, and he got to deliver a promo, which quite honestly he's getting much better at, and it took nearly everybody in the match to throw him out. And then he had a backstage segment with Shawn Michaels, so that's huge. And Frankie Kazarian was also in the match and did very well for himself as well. On Raw this past week, we also saw the return of Seth Rollins, who will challenge Damian Priest for the WWE World title at Money in the Bank here in Toronto. And then closing the show was the much-anticipated debut of the Wyatt Six, That's SICKS, not the number 6, as there were only 5 of them involved. It was a very effective angle, but I think it's all in the follow-up. I thought it was a very nice tribute to Bray, but at the end of the day, it's still Bo Dallas. I was never a fan, and none of the others in the group have ever really excited me either. But for many, this could be like when Glenn Jacobs went through all those years as Dr. Isaac Yankem and Fake Diesel before finally finding success with the Kane character, and hopefully we see the same for these 5. It seems that AEW was the only show this week that we really saw much of the same as they continue building toward their Forbidden Door event next weekend, which I will preview next week. On SmackDown, we saw an injury angle with CM Punk in his hometown of Chicago. We also finally saw the debut of Jacob Fatu joining the New Bloodline, and I've heard rumors that Zilla Fatu may be on his way as well, so things could get very interesting when Roman returns. And then last weekend, the WWE crew took us across the Atlantic for their latest PLE, Clash at the Castle in Glasgow, Scotland. Your announcers for the show were Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and the UK's own Wade Barrett, which was a nice touch. They started the event as they normally do by showing scenic views of the city, and then also showed some notables arriving before getting right into it. Starting the show was the I Quit match for the WWE Universal title, with Cody Rhodes defending against AJ Styles. They actually referred to Cody's belt as the world title, which makes me wonder what Priest is called. Cody's mother Michelle actually made the trip to Glasgow as well and was seated at ringside. Before the match starts, the referee brings both guys to the middle of the ring and explains the rules. And then Cole notes that there have been 26 I Quit matches in the history of WWE, with the first one taking place at WrestleMania 11 in '95 between Bob Backlund and Bret Hart. The fight ends up going backstage at one point as AJ tries to choke Cody with a headset cord. Back in the ring, Cody applies a figure-4 leg lock, and the announcers state that the ropes will not cause a break here, but AJ reaches the ropes anyway and uses them to pull himself to the floor, so Cody has to relinquish the hold. At ringside, AJ plants Cody into the announce desk with a brainbuster and then drills him over the head with a microphone, which busts Cody open. AJ then returns to the ring and places Cody's neck under a chair and then drops a knee on it. AJ then brings a kendo stick and leather belt into play. He applies an STF and Cody passes out, and then AJ declares himself the winner, but the ref explains that he has to say "I quit." AJ then brings a black bag into the ring when everyone is expecting thumbtacks, but it's actually filled with a pair of handcuffs. AJ handcuffs Cody's hands behind his back and proceeds to beat on him with the kendo stick. He then goes out of the ring and gets in Michelle's face, and she slaps him a few times. Back in the ring, I miss what happened, but somehow Cody was able to position the cuffs in front of him now. AJ wraps a chain around his forearm and tries the phenomenal forearm, but as his feet touch the top rope, Cody throws a chair at AJ's head, causing him to fall backwards and crash through the outside table. Cody then delivers a succession of crossroads in the ring, with the third one delivered onto a steel chair. Cody then handcuffs AJ to the top rope and starts beating on him with the chair. Cody then goes and grabs the steel steps, and AJ, upon seeing this, grabs the microphone and quits, so Cody retains. This was kind of an anticlimactic and quite honestly a lame finish, especially since Cody ended up hitting AJ with the steps anyway. As Cody celebrated, he is met in the entranceway by Solo Sikoa, who is sarcastically clapping. And then the rest of the bloodline attacks Cody from behind, and it's 3-on-1, while AJ has completely disappeared at this point. This brings out Randy Orton and Kevin Owens as backup, and they manage to hold off the bloodline for now. We then get the triple threat match for the women's tag team titles, with Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill defending against Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, and the team of Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. Jade displays some power in the early going as she muscles her way up from a double overhand wrist lock, and then executes a combination Samoan drop to Stark and fall-away slam to Fire at the same time. Eventually, the two challenging teams decide to work together to take out the champions, and it works as they take Jade out on the floor. There was a scary back body drop spot by Dawn that almost landed someone on their head. I believe it was Jade. Fire then tried a somersault off the top rope, but slipped a bit, though ended up landing on her 4 opponents at ringside. Jade then trips off the top rope as she tries a springboard. There was something weird going on with the ropes all night, which could have resulted in some dangerous spots. Shayna at one point had Jade trapped in the Karafuda clutch, and it looked like Jade was tapping out, which the announcers also pointed out, though the referee was not in a position to see it, which allowed Belair to break the hold with a 450 splash. The champions then double-team Shayna, but then Dawn sneaks in and hits a German suplex on Jade, while Fire steals the pin on Shayna to win the belts for her team. This is the outcome that I predicted, and I think it was the right call, especially in Scotland. Sami Zayn defended his Intercontinental title up next against Chad Gable, who was accompanied by Otis and a limping Maxine. This was a very good match and probably my favorite of the whole night, but I feel like the angle kind of distracted from the match a bit. The crowd started singing some kind of anthem or long chant, which I couldn't quite make out the words, but it felt like a big deal. Gable targeted Zayn's hand and arm for much of the match, and then kept enticing Otis and Maxine to take a cheap shot on Zayn while the ref wasn't looking. At one point, Maxine was holding the belt, and Gable was trying to get her to hit Sami, but she hesitated. Gable then orders Maxine onto the apron and starts yelling at her. Zayn tries for a haluva kick, but Gable dodges it, and he almost hits Maxine, but fortunately pumps the brakes just in time. This allows Gable to hit the Chaos Theory for a near fall. Gable then starts stalking Maxine at ringside, but Otis steps between them, and as Otis and Gable stare each other down, Zayn tries a somersault plancha, but ends up hitting Otis instead of Gable. Gable then hits a moonsault to the floor, taking out both Otis and Zayn. He then applies an ankle lock to Zayn on the floor. Zayn rolls out of it, causing Gable to lose his footing and fall into Maxine's injured leg with a chop block as Maxine was checking on Otis. The timing of this spot was excellent. Otis then gets in Gable's face, but Maxine stops him, and then Otis helps Maxine to the back, and while Gable is distracted, Zayn hits the haluva kick to keep the title. Kathy Kelly is backstage with new champions Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, who said that they did exactly what they said they were going to do and will be keeping these belts for a long time. Bayley versus Piper Niven was up next for Bayley's women's title. Chelsea tried to cheap shot Bayley in the early going, and then Bayley stomped on Chelsea's hand before Chelsea was ejected from ringside. Bayley later hit a belly-to-belly suplex from the middle rope, but then Chelsea ran back out trying to disguise herself as she had a Rey Mysterio mask on. This allowed Piper to hit a boss woman slam on the outside floor. Back in the ring, Bayley wrapped herself around Niven like a python and then secured a crucifix to finally pin Piper's shoulders to the mat and keep the title. The world's strongest man, Tom Stoltman, was shown at ringside, and then we're treated to a bagpipe performance of Scotland the Brave as Drew McIntyre makes his way out for the main event to challenge Damian Priest for the WWE World title. There was a frightening spot where Priest tried a somersault plancha but ended up getting his foot twisted up in the ropes and was noticeably limping the rest of the match. To his credit, he delivered a very impressive razor's edge on one foot. McIntyre came back with a claymore to Priest through the ringside barricade. He tried for a second claymore in the ring, but Priest caught him and planted him with the South of Heaven. McIntyre eventually did hit the claymore, but got two. Then there was a ref bump off the ring apron. McIntyre tried for another claymore, but Priest countered it into a powerbomb. Priest went for South of Heaven again, but it was blocked, and McIntyre hit another claymore. As Drew went for the pin, another ref came out with his back to the camera and counted 1 and 2 before stopping at 3 and revealed that it was CM Punk in a referee's shirt, which irked Drew. He grabbed Punk by the throat, but Punk delivered a low blow, allowing Priest to hit the South of Heaven to keep the title. Not the most creative ending, but it made sense for the storyline. So that wraps up another week here at the Royal Ramble. I will be back next weekend to preview the AEW Forbidden Door event. Until then, I leave you with an ABC.